You're listening to The Sustainable Act with Smiley Krana, a podcast about the environment, social impact, and culture. Each episode, we discuss issues, solutions, and how you can become more sustainable in life and work. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and follow the show. Enjoy! Hello, I am so glad you are here and tuned in for another awesome guest on the show today. Today I'm chatting with Kori Chilibeck, one of the founders of the Earth Group, a Canadian company with a sole purpose of providing school meals to children globally. They have a partnership with the United Nations World Food Program to fund their food programs, and to date, they have already provided 3.8 million school meals in over 1,500 locations around the globe. Wow. The Earth Group sells products such as bottled water, tea, and coffee, all with the environment in mind when it comes to sourcing and packaging. And this is actually how I got to know about the Earth Group. I was looking for a more environmentally friendly version of bottled water for my TV show after the COVID return that wasn't plastic. I found out that Earth Group carries aluminum bottled water, which is so amazing, and it was such a hit on my show. But we're also supporting the good cause, so it was like a win-win. And so I had to bring them onto the show today. Kori, it's so
Thanks
good
for
to have you.
well, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
so
excited.
excited to talk to you and like get to know you. And like I've been talking with Matt, one of the other co-founders, and so it's
Yeah.
great to meet you.
No, yeah, Matt and I've been we've been working together for a long time. So yeah, he's a
Mhm.
great guy. Yeah.
So tell me your story. How did you meet Matt, and how like when did you decide to start this company? And
I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, which is a great place to grow up, and playing hockey, going on family ski trips and stuff, and didn't really realize, I guess, that 99% of the world didn't live the way I was living in Edmonton because I was young and naive and lived in a bit of a bubble, I guess you could say. So the company actually, the way it started is I went on a trip, kind of my first trip away from home, away from my family. I went to Nepal for about a month and a half, and I was on a Mount Everest base camp expedition, and I was dressed like your typical North American tourist with my like North Face puffy outfit on, and like there was like a 16-year-old kid behind me carrying my bag, and we were heading up towards base camp. We were about 2 days below base camp, so at about like 18,000 feet, so really high. It's cold, it's icy. We're on this little narrow trail, and we passed an old man on the trail going the same direction as us, and he had this enormous basket on his back, which you can kind of picture from the Sherpas of Nepal, carrying this enormous basket, except for he had no shoes on, no jacket, no gloves, no hat, and he was barefoot. It was amazing. And we kind of talked to him just really briefly through our guide, interpreter, and he was getting paid 25 cents US a day to carry this enormous load up the mountain. And we asked him what he was carrying, and he didn't even know what the items were. And when we looked inside, there was just cans and cans and cans of cola, pop, essentially, from some of the biggest companies on the planet. So we realized, that these big companies were making money literally off the backs of the poorest people in the world. And came back home, and I was still in university, and started thinking, well, why couldn't you have a company that could compete against the biggest companies in the world, make a great product, produce it ethically and responsibly, hire the best and the brightest. But at the end of the day, we would give everything we made back to people who really needed it. And so that was really the sort of where it came from. And it really just started as a little fundraising effort on campus to try to raise a little bit of money to help people. And it's sort of grown from there.
I love that. That's so inspiring, especially to hear that like this started as like you were still a student in university. And I think a lot of like big ideas start when you're so young like that. And then it's so cool that you executed that, and to date you're still, going through with it and have made such a difference. So that's so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. I think when you're in university, you have a lot less to lose when you start something, right? You don't have a
Yeah.
lot of like, besides this enormous mountain of student debt,
Mhm.
you don't have a lot of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier, a little freer, I think, to just try something wacky and wild and different. So some cool stuff come out, I think, at that age. Yeah, for
Absolutely, I agree. Like,
sure.
and you haven't been told no as much either because you're just starting out, and
Yeah, I agree.
no, and I've been there too,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, you just have this like, I guess, feeling of like I can do anything, and that's
Hmm.
yeah,
And people will tell you no, but that comes a little later. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's some reason everyone wants to tell you no. Yeah.
So that's when the Earth Group started, or like kind of some kind of version of it.
Yeah, it was like the very first small version of the Earth Group, just out of my campus apartment. We were selling our very first product, which was Earth Water. And then about a year or so later, because when it first started, it was a very small, like I was still going to school. It was just like a little side project. I was working at a ski shop actually in Edmonton. And that's where I met Matt. And Matt was also working at the ski shop. And in And, Sundays we'd be in the ski shop in the back. We worked in the back kind of waxing and fixing skis. That was our job. And so I was telling him all about my company that I started and this idea I had. And he was like, oh, this sounds really cool. This sounds really cool. Let me know. And I'd love to work for you. I'm like, well, it's not really the job you can get paid for right now.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm not even getting paid for it. But eventually we got a little bigger, and Matt came on and started helping me. And, together we really, we've grown the company to be in 11 countries around the world, selling multiple products and trying to do our best to change the world.
So cool.
But yeah, just sort of started there. Yeah.
What year was this in?
Oh, wow, you're going to ask me dates. That would have been probably 2006, probably, somewhere around that range. Yeah. I don't know exactly the date, but somewhere around 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what about the World Food Program? So when did you integrate that? Or was that always part of your mission? Or when did you partner up with them, and why the World Food Program?
Because I was a political science student at university, I always wanted to work with the UN. I love what they stood for and the work that they were doing on a humanitarian level all over the world. And originally, we actually worked with the United Nations Refugee Agency, doing some water projects in our first few years. And then we moved from the UNHCR over to the World Food Program. The World Food Program is the biggest of the organizations. It's sort of the umbrella organization for the UN. So everything else sort of operates underneath it. So they were a little better set up to handle sort of a corporate partner like we were. But yeah, it was tough to get the relationship because, we were running a company out of a van. You can't really just phone up the UN and be like, hey, you want to be our partner? They don't take your call. And, so we phoned like every phone number on the website. We, sent packages with like our idea, a little binder to, by DHL, UPS, FedEx, Canada Post. I think we even used fax machines at that time if, they existed still. And after like 3 months of nonstop calling them and sending them stuff, someone finally called from Geneva and was like, if you please stop sending us stuff, we'll give you a 10-minute meeting. And that 10-minute meeting in Ottawa happened at the UN office there. And, they kind of liked the idea and showed a little bit of merit. So they gave us a little test drive just in Canada. We couldn't even say we were partnered with them. We just sort of test drove it. And then it seemed to work okay. And we kind of expanded to a little bit bigger relationship. And now we sort of have a worldwide relationship with the World Food Program. So, yeah.
So the secret is to stay persistent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, lots of people, like we just talked about, people will tell you no, and that's when it starts. So you just have to keep staying persistent until they tell you to please go away and never stop.
Yeah. That's amazing. So like what country, because you said 11 countries around the world, is this like 11 countries you've supported or have been selling your products in?
Yeah, kind of selling our products. So, Canada is obviously our biggest market, but we also sell in the European Union, a few countries there, as well as Japan, a little bit into South Korea. We ship a little bit to the United States. So yeah, we're slowly sort of expanding, selling our products sort of on a global scale. That's our goal, is to expand globally. We're still a very small company, but we've been growing pretty well. Even through the pandemic, we've been able to continue along.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about like the countries and regions that you've supported so far, like, because I read those numbers on your website, like you've provided about 3.8 million school meals and 1,500, like that was so impressive. But where exactly is this? Like, who are you supporting? And it's school meals specifically? Like,
yeah, so we right now, for the last like 10 years or so, we've really been focusing on school meals. So providing food, water, really, and education to some of the poorest kids on the planet. And what happens is every year, the WFP sort of gives us a list of the greatest need, where, they give us 5 countries sort of in the world that have the greatest need. And then off that list, I guess, we choose a country every year to support. Recently, we supported Sri Lanka, Tajikistan, the Philippines, Bolivia. And a lot of times we pick, like Bolivia is a good example. It's a country that sort of the world doesn't think about very often. Tajikistan, same way. Most people couldn't point out Tajikistan on a map. And what happens is there's not a lot of money going into those places to help with those programs. A lot of the money is being funneled into like Afghanistan and Syria, which is great. Those places 100% need that money to help. There's terrible things happening there. But that being said, some of these other countries sort of get forgotten about. So we feel that we can come in there and sort of do some great work there in a country that no one's really focusing on. So we've been doing that a little bit, and it's been great. And every year we sort of pick a different country around the world and support anywhere from 100,000 up to 500,000 school meals. And they're not all at once; they're kind of spread over time. But yeah, and the WFP is an incredible partner. They're amazing people. So they execute the programs for us. So we fund them, and then they go in there and they'll provide breakfast and lunch and make sure the meals are cooked for them. And there's almost always clean water and sanitation provided, and sometimes solar panels. And they source the food, which can be tricky. Sometimes it's sourced locally. Like in Tajikistan, we were part of a project where we actually were paying farmers locally to grow the food, and then we purchased the food from the farmers, and it would go to the schools. And most of those farmers were actually parents of the kids in the school, so it was a really cool program that works really well. And sometimes the food's not available, so it does have to be brought in, or some of the food needs to be brought in. We've worked in Sri Lanka. We did some fortified rice projects where we actually put basically vitamins into the rice to help the kids, because rice is really just empty calories. You can't live on just plain rice. So we've worked on some projects like that. We kind of try to really follow the World Program's lead, because they're definitely the experts and they're the ones been doing it for a long, long time. And so it's really fun just to be able to support their efforts, even in the little way that we do.
That's awesome. There's so much to unpack here. Like, I love that point you made about those forgotten countries or regions that normally aren't on the larger scale of like most organizations when we're donating to, or like charities. So like, that's really cool too. Like a food for thought as well, is like a lot of regions that people don't often know about. And so they're not getting necessarily that support that hopefully like they could be getting more. And I love like the paying farmers to grow food, because it turns into like the circular kind of movement where you're providing jobs, and then that in fact is providing food instead of just giving, like, I think I like that idea too. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we really like to do more than just sort of drop off some food and leave. So we want to make sure that we're sort of making an impact on a bunch of different levels, and it's a sustainable project, as all of our projects actually usually get taken over by local governments after they've been sort of put up. So they don't just, we don't just provide some meals and then when the meals are gone, they're gone. It's there's always some sort of an afterthought there that the programs continue in some respects. So those programs continue to help the people long term, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And have you ever visited or have been visiting any of these like areas?
Yeah, we do go sometimes, for sure. You kind of have to be careful, because we're not really helping, really. Right. We're just there for a few days, and we don't want to get in the way, and we don't want to draw attention to the area that might hurt people, because a lot of times there's some dangerous areas. So we don't want to draw attention and end up hurting people. So we have been lucky to go. We went in the Philippines, we went to Tajikistan, we went to Sri Lanka. It was just, they're obviously very life-changing experiences. Fly into the grass runway, jump into the white Toyota Land Cruisers, go off into the middle of nowhere, and you get to, see these amazing people, see how they live, go to the schools, understand sort of the logistics and the challenges that are faced providing the food, or the economic challenges in the area, what's being done to help. It's always extremely uplifting. It's amazing that human spirit is, alive and well in these areas, and people are really doing their best to make things better. And it's absolutely life-changing. So I know for us, when things are going bad and we've had a bad quarter or a bad year, going to do these, see the projects we're doing really changes everything. It's everybody's super motivated, and we just come back like ready to work 10 times harder. It's really inspiring, and we're really happy. And to see that, we know that our, the partners of the WFP are on the ground. They're doing amazing work, and they're super passionate, and a lot of times putting their lives in risk to help people. And it's really incredible. Yeah. And it really does make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And it's like, it's so great that we can use our privilege here to help other communities, but it's also like to consider that we can't, like the way we're running, like how privileged we are. It's like, we can't, I'm trying to figure out the words for this, but we need these communities around the world, right? Because like a lot of our food, a lot of our crop or products and stuff come from areas around the world. Like you said, the labor and even like the fashion market and all these things that we need. Communities, and so we can't survive without them. And so it's cool and great that we're using our privilege and time and efforts and resources to give back.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Sri Lanka is a good example. I mean, I think most of what Lululemon, for instance, produces is in Sri Lanka. I think the Victoria's Secrets, their main factories are there too. Most of, a lot of the world's tea comes from that area. I mean, you can see it being picked. So the way we purchase our products here really affects lives there. So if we're picking, for tea is a good example. We saw some of the tea plantations. Essentially, these women are working in tea farms for $1.50 a day. It's really terrible. But if we were purchasing like fair trade teas and we're purchasing organic teas, it totally changes everything. If you pay 25 cents more for your box of tea, it really makes a difference in someone's life a long ways away, because they're actually getting a fair wage instead of really essentially working for nothing in some cases. So you definitely see the impact of our consumerism on this side of the world, see how it affects people on the other side. And that's really what I think our company is all about, is like, we're just giving giving consumers the chance through their like everyday purchases here in Canada to affect things all over the world. So they don't have to donate to charity. They don't have to volunteer their time. All they really have to do during the day is, buy a cup of Earth coffee or a bottle of Earth water or Earth tea.
Right.
And that does something to make the world a little bit better. And I think if there was like hundreds of companies doing what we did, it could really start to scale and make massive change. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. And on my blog post we did, or blog or whatever, we did an article about greenwashing and like really did some research into that too. And like that's the thing with like all these like major corporations is that they just say that they add green labels and green terms, but not transparent at all with the process behind what they're doing to support other communities and people. And so like that's what really, like for anyone listening, it's really understanding like who you're supporting, where you're giving your money, and seeing like if that company is being transparent with where that money is going and who it's supporting and what Earth Group is like. Especially on your website, you have everything listed out and not hiding anything, so that makes all the difference because then who you're supporting. I love what you said about it. It goes a long way changing
Yeah,
someone's.
no, it's important to be transparent in this day and age because, like you said, you could quickly go onto a website or search a company and try to see what they're actually doing on the backside.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. There's a lot of greenwashing and blue washing, and unfortunately, it makes people very skeptical too, right? Everybody looks at everything as like, oh, this must be a scam. This can't be
Exactly.
real. They're not really doing what they're saying they're doing, and in some cases, that's probably the case. But in a lot of cases, people are really trying to make a difference and trying to do something good.
And it's like, yeah, the advantage of like with these big corporations is that they have the money to do so, and hopefully we see that change as well. But
Yeah.
I find that it's like a lot of like the smaller companies that are really making an effort, and hopefully one day we see that change.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. And it's I sometimes I feel like things are changing for the better, and then all of a sudden something pushes everything backwards a giant
Yeah.
step, and it's not. So yeah,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
something just like revealed where it's
Mhm.
yeah. So let's talk about fair trade, organic, because I do want to get into like the products you carry. And
Mhm.
you mentioned like fair trade. And can we break that down? Like what exactly does that mean? What exactly is fair trade and organic, and the difference between that and just like, I guess, regular?
Right. So, I mean, we do fair trade pretty much everything. Well, everything we do is fair trade. So that means whoever we're buying the products from, they're getting paid a fair wage, or a living wage in some cases. So coffee is a good example. Most coffee in the world is not fair trade, and tea is the same way, not fair trade. And so we're paying what we think is a market standard for the coffee, which helps the farmers live. Fair trade also makes sure that the kids are not working in the fields. There's no child labor. People are working under safe working conditions. They're not being exposed to toxins and chemicals that would make it unsafe for them to work. And there's just a lot of difference between sort of a traditional coffee and a fair trade coffee, which unfortunately makes the fair trade coffee quite a bit more expensive for consumers. So not everybody's willing to pay a little bit more. But when you think about the impact it has on the other side of the world, we know that segment is growing quite a bit. But fair trade is also making sure it's protecting biodiversity and the land as well. It's not just sort of pillaging, getting as much productivity out of the land as you can and then moving along. It's also making sure that we're protecting the environment as well from that point of view. So those things are super important to us. And then organic is, we're making sure, we're not using crazy chemicals and things that we don't need. And we're using organic fertilizers. And again, that makes it safer for the workers, but it also makes the product far safer for us to consume at the end product. Obviously, there's a huge growth towards organic products right now, moving away from some of the chemicals that we've been using for 50 years or more. Just because we do it doesn't mean it's right. The world we need to evolve. We need to change. If things aren't always getting better, we're doing something wrong. So it's important for us to making sure that we're fair trade, we're organic. We're also a B Corp certified company too, which is something that we pride ourselves as well. We're also part of the United Nations Global Compact. So we really just try to be involved in as many things that can show to the world that we are really doing our best to do what we do. We don't just put it right on the bottle that we try to pay a fair wage. We actually go out and get the certifications, make sure we're doing what we're doing. And it's important because I think consumers are clearly looking for companies that are going that extra mile to do things the right way.
Absolutely. And I think as a consumer, it's so important. Like we just mentioned greenwashing, and like there are a lot of corporations that aren't really doing anything, but they add like a green label to their product and make consumers feel good about their purchases. But like as consumers, I think it's a responsibility to really know like that label that says, go look more into it and research more into, are they actually doing the work? And I think that makes all the difference for any consumer looking to purchase more ethically.
No, I agree with you. And there's some big companies that if they made those changes would make some massive changes changes in the world just by
100%.
changing. And we can all think of, I'm sure, a few. So
Mm-hmm.
particularly in the food industry and the clothing industry, that
Mm-hmm.
we can make some big changes.
And I think there has been like a lot of protests in the fight against, like, because climate change is a huge, these corporations are a huge contributor to that, right? Yeah, our individual impact is great. That's amazing, and we need that. But we can't really make a difference until we hold these larger companies accountable for their actions and things
Yeah,
like
right. And the only way to hold them accountable is through their bottom line.
that.
The
Mm-hmm.
only way they'll change is if you stopped buying those products. Then they would have to sit down in a boardroom and just say, hey, no one's buying this product anymore. What's the reason for that? Well, everybody thinks it's bad for the world. We're like, well, maybe we should make it better for the world. And that's what they'll do, right? Because I mean, especially
Yeah.
publicly funded or publicly traded companies, they're
Yeah.
not really concerned about anything besides share value. And
Mm-hmm.
if the public good is pushing them to do great things, be more environmentally conscious, be more ethical in their production, then, and if that affects their share value, they'll do it. Otherwise, they won't. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to motivate big companies to do things unless there's a direct impact on share value. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to start with that, I think the first step is just to gain knowledge and educate ourselves. So, like, having this podcast episode with you and just talking about something that's like maybe people don't know about, and once you start to learn, then you can, that's something I've been doing the last couple of years too, is like now I'm really critical on where I'm spending my money and who I'm supporting. Even if it's like a couple dollars more, it makes a big difference. But that started with knowledge and learning, so it's huge too. So so the tea that you sell, I read that it's one of the only grown teas in Canada. Something
Yeah.
yeah, I want to talk about that. So, like, can you tell me more about that process and the behind the scenes of how you harvest your tea?
Sure. We've kind of partnered with an amazing family in Alberta. They have this beautiful farm about an hour and a half outside of Edmonton, just right on the Pembina River, right on the sort of the Athabasca Forest area. And a lot of the tea is actually just wildcrafted in the forest. So it's actually you just sort of wander through the forest with tree planting bags, and you actually pick the different herbs that we need to make the tea. And it's all picked by hand, most of it. Some of it's grown. They have a beautiful farm there right on the river, like the mint. Anyway, it's picked by hand, all of it, and then it's dried in the sun and washed by hand, and then it's packaged and shipped all over the world. So we know exactly in this case where our product comes from, who's affected by it, who's working there, how they're doing it. We can go see it all the time. Obviously, it's all organic. They don't even really want you to drive your car down in the field in case it like leaks a little bit of oil. And they're really, really picky. Their whole setup is pretty much off the grid. It's really amazing. Really crazy people doing some amazing stuff, and I mean crazy in the good way.
Yeah.
Just thinking of things really differently and doing amazing stuff. So we're really happy to be working with a partner like that. We've been working with them for almost 8 or 9 years now, producing our teas for us, and it's great to find a family like that who's committed to the same sort of things that we are, and work with them. And then the reality is we're good at selling and marketing the product, and they're really good at growing it. So it was a really good combination, partnership to come together to try to do something great.
So I don't know too much about like how tea is made. I haven't really looked into that, but what are the advantages and differences in tea grown here in Canada versus somewhere such as like South America or Africa?
So because of our climate, we can't grow like your green, black and white teas here. So we're focusing on herbal teas in Canada. So that's the big difference, is that, in those other countries, they're doing pretty much just a similar tea everywhere, which is sort of your traditional teas. And we are looking to sort of expand into that market, probably from Sri Lanka, where we can buy directly from the farmers, the women up in the mountains, and we'll give all the money back to their project. So that's something that we're actually working on as a future project, just to add to our tea line. So we do have more of the caffeinated teas, but right now we're doing just the herbal teas. So again, it's just like wild mint, and we're doing, some chamomile in there, and there's raspberry leaf, and there's all these different herbs. We have like 15 different herbs in our Earth Blend one, that it's all mixed together by Eckhart, who's our tea master, and he makes the perfect blend for us, and away we go. Yeah, it's kind of a neat process.
That's awesome. And how about your coffee? I know we already talked about the fair trade and certified organic process, but what measures are your company taking to ensure the sustainable process?
Right. So again, obviously organic and fair trade, but also we make sure that the coffee brokers actually visit the coffee farms. They're not just sort of putting the stamp on it and buying it from here over the phone. That we make sure that someone goes every year to visit the coffee farms to make sure that those sort of ideals are being upheld and they're really following the rules. Because it's really easy to turn a blind eye once someone gets in the certifications. Who knows how things change? And so we also do a world blend. So we're buying from all over the world because coffee is a crop like anything else, and it has a season, and that season changes from place to place so we basically follow the coffee season around the world. We started in South America, Central America, and we moved, through Africa, through Ethiopia, and into Indonesia, and then we come back around the world. So we're always buying sort of fresh, great coffees at all times. And then Curator, which is sort of a sommelier for coffee, and he blends the different coffees together to sort of keep our consistent flavor that we want in all our coffees. So it's quite complex, and it all comes into Vancouver. So it comes in by ship to Vancouver, and where it's roasted and packaged right here in the Lower Mainland. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And like I know we kind of already talked about this, but greenwashing and consumerism and stuff, I think it's so important for people to understand that your company goes beyond sustainable packaging. And I think that's so important too, because just like it's always more than just like having this eco-friendly package, like what goes on behind the scenes and what goes into making that, manufacturing it, and the labor and then the aftermath. So that's really cool to like really learn about the process behind all these products. So amazing. I want to get into this. I'm so excited about this one because this is what introduced me to your company. It's the
Yeah.
aluminum bottled water.
Oh yeah, aluminum. Yeah, that is.
Oh, you have it? Yeah, I have one
Yeah.
too in my
Yeah.
in my kitchen. So from my understanding, you're one of the only companies in Canada to offer this. And it's a game changer because these bottles are not only reusable, but when recycled, it goes back into the cycle of becoming an aluminum can or bottle within a month. Like so far, like here in BC, I know the process in the recycling depots, it's like that. I don't know if
Yeah.
it differs from place to place, but it is one of the most sustainable single-use materials to use, because with plastic, once you recycle it, it's downcycled, and only about, I think 30% of it is turned into other materials. So where and how did your company get this idea of creating this product?
Yeah, I mean, I think where the idea came from. I mean, Matt and I are both, it weighed very heavy on us that we were producing plastic. So, and we've always been a small enough company where we can change packaging and, come up with the next greatest thing that's more environmentally friendly and, move that way. And we've done glass, and glass is actually probably worse. And then we did Tetra Pak for quite a while, especially in Europe. And Tetra Pak, unfortunately, is worse. We don't have any recycling really for Tetra Pak in Canada for those types of packages, because there's many layers. There's like plastic and foil and paper, and they're all squished together, and it's really difficult to pull them all apart and recycle them. And so we've been, trying to come up with a better packaging for a long time. And we're the only two people probably that own a water bottle company that says don't drink bottled water. It's not necessary. Just drink from the tap. But if you're going to, drink ours. But we are still producing a plastic bottle, and that really bothered us. Even though you can recycle plastic, but as you said, only 30% of it, if that gets reused, and there's a lot of loss in the cycle. So I was actually in Japan when we started selling products in Japan, and I had seen an aluminum bottle. They were one of the first countries to ever do this aluminum bottle with a screw-off top and a BPA-free liner and everything you need to make it work. And I brought it back, and at the same time, Matt had been at a big sustainability conference, and all these companies were talking about how we need to move away from single-use plastics. And so we really just sat down and like, look what I found. He's like, that's amazing. Let's see if we can do it here. And so we were able to find the technology and bring it into Canada and start manufacturing. And the more we looked into aluminum, the more excited we got. And 70% of all aluminum sort of ever created since the beginning of aluminum is still being used today because it gets recycled. And most of the aluminum in our cans, like over 80%, is actually recycled aluminum. It just was another aluminum can. And because of the beer industry in Canada, you can recycle aluminum cans everywhere. And we have this great system to just get it right back into the recycle stream, and you get a deposit. So there's a value to the aluminum can, whereas, and aluminum is a metal that's traded on the stock market. It's a commodity, so it actually has a value. So people don't throw it in landfills. It always ends up getting recycled. So it's great. I mean, it's more expensive than plastic by far, a lot more, but we just decided we're going to have to just do that. We'll have to be a more expensive product because this is, the ethical package right now. And plus you can reuse it. You can fill it up as many times as you want, clean it out, use it again. If it gets too dented up, throw it in your recycle bag and get another one. So we're really excited to move away from plastic, and we're hoping we'll be completely into aluminum products. COVID kind of slowed things down a bit, but our goal is to be sort of by maybe next year this time to be everything 100% aluminum. Yeah.
So awesome. Music to my ears. Because that was the thing with the COVID whole thing. I was a sustainability coordinator on a TV show, and we were completely bottled free, no water bottles on set. And it was going great. Like everyone was bringing their own water bottles, and we had water stations and everything. But then COVID happened, and we came back, and we needed to provide just for safety, health. And so we still had our water station at sanitization, but just for health and safety, we needed bottled water. And we tried different things like box water and things, because I was like so
Yeah.
keen on not getting plastic. And these were such a hit because of you can reuse them. And I found like even the producers on my show were like, oh, I've been using this for like the last couple of weeks. And then, then
Yeah.
it pop out for it, which is so good, because now you're like, even if you do need to use the single-use bottle, which is aluminum, you can reuse it for as long as you need, and then
Yeah.
swap it out for another.
Get a felt pen and put your name on the back and you're good to
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's so great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like the cost difference. So I know like this does cost more than plastic, but I'm curious to know, I guess, just the manufacturing process, or like, because I would love to see this more in the mainstream market, that we don't see aluminum, like no one's even had heard of it on my set when we brought these in. And
Oh, good. Thank you for
yeah.
bringing it in. Thanks for your support.
Yeah,
That's
of
really nice.
course. I
Yeah.
had to promote it. But how can we get these into a mainstream market and cancel out plastic bottles overall? And I know it's maybe like a very big,
Well, it's tough. Yeah.
complicated question. Yeah. And like with the cost difference and all, it's just.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for us and disappointing in a lot of cases, but we've made some strides. So like, for instance, you can go to Whole Foods. We're the only aluminum bottle in Whole Foods right now, and it's been going well. And Shoppers Drug Mart finally put us on the shelves, and Loblaws, which is helping. But the reality is when you go into those stores, the Cokes and Pepsis and Nestle's of the world, which are most of the brands that you see when you go in there, they have, their products significantly cheaper, and they have like 400 facings of it, and it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. So we have a hard time sort of competing with that. And then there's the exclusivity arrangements, which are really difficult for us to deal with as well, where you've got like, Coca-Cola has the exclusivity for, an entire university. And that's really difficult, where we're not even allowed to. So when I came up with the idea, I wanted to sell at the University of Alberta, where I went to school. And I was so naive, thinking I was going to go around to little restaurants and shops and everybody's going to love my product. But no, they couldn't sell it at all because Coca-Cola owned the University of Alberta. And that's the case with most universities.
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. Even the city of Edmonton, where we're headquartered, the city of Edmonton is essentially all facilities are owned by Coca-Cola. Like every swimming pool and hockey rink and recreation center and so high schools, junior high schools, Coca-Cola they give them a free scoreboard. So, every pop that's sold in the schools or juice or their smart waters that are actually just as bad as pop, they have to be Coca-Cola products. And so they own basically all these like public spaces, and it's very difficult for us to get in, which means we have no money for marketing, so we can't like put billboards up and like pay an athletes. Like LeBron James isn't drinking earth water, right? So
oh my gosh, if only.
if only, if you know him,
goal,
please ask him. Maybe he'd be okay. It just takes like
brand ambassador.
Yeah, exactly. Small things like that would make a difference, but we don't have the money and the marketing power of the Cokes and Pepsis, so it becomes tough. So it really becomes word of mouth. We just have to get on the shelf where people see it and be like, oh, that's cool. That's aluminum. Read our story. It's on the back. Understand what they're about. And when people understand what we're doing and what we're all about, they really become loyal customers. But our biggest challenge as the company is trying to get our story out there, trying to get the message out there. And it's really hard. It's really hard. So thank you for having us on today, because that's something that really helps. Yeah. Those things make a big difference for us. And just trying to get a moment to tell a story where people might connect with what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. And I think the more people that know, the better, because I hope that people listening to this episode will go and tell their networks. And I know like another Netflix show that was starting up again got plastic bottles because they didn't even know. They're like, oh, we're coming back from COVID, we need bottles. So we just got like this pallet of plastic bottles. And I was like, no, I know this great company and you have to check them out. And then they ended up ordering a pallet of aluminum water. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, word of mouth goes such a long way. So I hope more and more people realize that there is like a way better product out there. And I think if bigger companies can invest because they have the money and
absolutely.
Like creating those conscious where they, like you said, Whole Foods only carries aluminum.
We're the only aluminum bottle they have. They have lots of plastic, but we're the only one. Yeah. So we're the only aluminum, and then I think Shoppers Drug Mart we're the only aluminum. Same with Loblaws, and then all the IGAs in like the Lower Mainland, like the garden markets, what they're called. Those they have us as well. And I don't know if you go to a grocery store that you love to go to and they don't have us, just tell them to bring it in. And then those things really help because I mean,
Yeah.
we can deliver to any restaurant and grocery store in the country really, but it's just someone, giving us the chance to be on the shelf is tricky sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what I actually had this written down too. Like if people were to sell these in their stores or through their businesses, like my question was, do you offer wholesale options? But I'm going to say
Oh
yes.
yeah, yeah. We've been able to partner with like Gordon Food Service, which is pretty much can hit every restaurant and cafe in the country, and then we work with the Tree of Life, which is a big grocery distribution company, and they can pretty much go to anywhere you could possibly imagine. So, or we can just ship it right from our warehouse. We'll package it up and send it to your door,
Yeah.
if that's what you want. We're pretty flexible that way. So it's yeah, we're a small company, so we love working with anybody who calls really and try to get
Hmm.
our product in there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I first started talking, it was with Matt, but about like shipping process, because I wanted to go with the product, but then I'm like, oh, does the shipping to Vancouver make sense for being more sustainable versus
Yeah.
sourcing locally? But I found out that you were shipping like regularly to Vancouver because more and more, shipments are coming this way. So, I mean, that goes a long way too. Like, I know like the transportation costs and carbon emissions, it does balance out because you're doing regular, at least for people located in Vancouver, I can say.
Yeah, we do large shipments and we try to use rail when we can and
Mm,
warehouse big shipments. And our motto, sort of our growth model is, so we manufacture in one place, and as soon as the volume gets higher, we get another manufacturing spot
right.
closer to the market. So we try to make everything as close to the market as possible. We're not like Evian that makes water in a little town in France and then ships it all over the world. We're just trying to find a really good water source. It's always spring water, really healthy, really delicious. But we're
Uh-huh.
not selling the water. I mean, water is water in a bottle. No one
Yeah.
really cares as long as it's safe and it tastes good. It's bottled water. It's nothing exciting. It's just really the packaging. We're trying to make
Right.
as you said, the carbon footprint, trying to keep it as small as possible and try to make everything as local as we can. Canada is tricky that way, in being like the second biggest country on the planet with almost no people, and we're spread out over this huge area. So it's really difficult to make anything local because some of these cities are very small, and there's
Mhm.
3,000 kilometers between the next city. So we have to. It's a bit of a balancing act, but we spend a lot of time with logistics and warehousing and trying to figure out the smallest carbon footprint possible. And it was nice because of our B Corp certification, it really helped us really hone in on that and dial in and try to figure out the best ways we could do that and get better at it constantly too. So yeah.
Mhm. Amazing. So I want to get into what has been your proudest moment while running the Earth Group,
Wow, that is a good question.
or one
Well,
of
I
your
think
proudest.
one of the proudest, probably like one that sticks out in my mind. The first time we went to the field to see one of our projects, we went to the Philippines. We were in Mindanao, and it was one of those life-changing experiences. Down to into the grass runway, into the jeeps, drove into the jungle for 2 hours, and that area had been hit by some successive typhoons and had wiped entire villages out into the ocean. There was, mass graves everywhere. It was pretty devastating. There was also some violence in the area. There was a separatist movement happening, and all these little villages and kids were kind of caught in the middle of it and cut off completely. No food, no clean water. Anyway, we went into the area, and like 200 kids came out of the jungle. They were singing, they were dancing, they were just excited to see us. We got to see their village. We were there at lunchtime, so they were getting, their food that we provided was being provided to them. Their school was just essentially like an old roof with 4 posts, and they were just so happy to be there. And the families came out too, and they were helping, by catching, fish and trying to supplement what we were providing. It was just one of those, like, everything was just totally devastating, yet the human spirit was so alive and well there, and they were so happy and excited, and you could see that there was positive for the future. So as long as they got to go to school and get educated, that was what was going to change everything. And
Mhm.
having the food at school was the only meals they were getting during the day, was the ones that we were providing at school. So it was one of those real life-changing moments where you just, all your hard work and
Yeah.
sacrifice was worth it. So I guess that probably would have been definitely one of the proudest moments in the company for sure.
That's so
Yeah.
sweet. That's so awesome too. And like I know like I did some reading into that too. And it's like giving these children like opportunities to go to school keeps them from child labor and working from a young age. And it's like
Oh,
giving them more opportunities for the future so that they can
yeah.
eventually give back to the community. So it's just full circle moment too.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely changes everything. And in a lot of these communities, especially Tajikistan was a good example. Most of the girls were not going to school; they were working. they were in the fields working literally, or cooking, or collecting firewood, or anyway, they weren't going to school. So what we do there, and in Bolivia we do the same thing, is we provide food for the girls to take home at the end of the day. So you're essentially bribing the families to send the girls to school.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do this program, you get like 100% enrollment of the girls as well. And then it's like the research is super clear. If you educate the girls in the community, it really like absolutely changes everything. And
Mm-hmm.
as you said, it sort of changes that cycle of poverty really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really fun working with the United Nations when they come up with like these crazy cool ideas. I'm like, that's such a good idea. And it really changed everything. And now you've got everybody going to school. And then if they get educated, they can become teachers and doctors and nurses and engineers, or whatever their dreams might be. But the only way they're going to do that is if they can go to school. And most of them, they just don't have that opportunity, right? So,
Absolutely. And just giving back to the economy by investing in like those children too. So it's like, that's how your country thrives. But I just love hearing that. And like, I think that really goes well with my next question is, what do you hope people take away from your mission and the message that you want to share with the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to is that we feel it's actually more important how you spend your money than how you vote now. I mean, your dollar really will affect how things happen in the world. It affects how big companies will change, what products will be out there. It affects people's lives significantly all over the world. I think once people understand that, I think it can change everything. So when you go into a store, like you said, be careful what you're buying. Don't just buy the first thing that's there, or the only thing that's offered to you. And a lot of times it's difficult because in stores like your traditional grocery stores, sometimes the only products that are offered to you are these traditional ones that are owned by your Unilevers, Cokes, Pepsis, and Nestle's and Crafts of the world. And I'm not saying those companies are evil, but they're not doing good things either. So look for those companies, look for those clothing brands, look for those food brands, and be careful how you spend your money, because it will change things for sure. Yeah, and I think that's what we hope people do. I mean, if Nestle, for instance, operated like we did, they could like solve world hunger in like 5 years. If they could do that. We're just so tiny and we barely do anything, but we're still able to feed millions and millions of people. So if we need some time to get bigger, and we will continue to do that. But if other companies started doing what we did, that'd be great. Yeah.
I love it. That's so perfect. So how can people learn more about the Earth Group? You have a website?
Yeah, check us out, earthgroup.org, or online at the Earth Group on all our Instagram and Facebooks and Twitters and things like that. So at the Earth Group, and I'm at Kori Chilibeck, so you can check out, send me a message. Happy to respond. We're a pretty small company, so you literally will get an email back from us if you email us. So.
Yeah, I know when I contacted the Earth Group, I got a call from Matt, and I was like, "This is nice too. It's a personal touch."
There's only like 9 of us, so you're gonna get a call from one of us. Yeah.
Support small businesses. And also, I know the website also lists locations of where your products currently carried and sold too. So those that are interested in knowing if you can go to like a local store or whatever, the information's all online.
Yeah, for sure. And we have an online store too, and all sorts of cool stuff. So so ask your local grocery store to bring us in, and if you're at Shoppers Drug Mart, pick up a bottle, or Loblaws, or Whole Foods, or IGAs, and wherever you see us. It really does help. Yeah.
Yes. Do you have any final thoughts before we conclude?
Oh, well, just thank you for having me on. These things make a big difference for companies like us, and the work that you do in your industry is hugely helpful. And I think that the more people do what you do, the better the planet will be as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Kori, for being a green hero and chatting with me on the Sustainable Act. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is great. I really had a good time.
And for everyone listening, please remember to subscribe to the show and check out our website, thesustainableact.com, for more resources, blog posts, links, and more. And I'll also link everything about Earth Group down below and in a blog post. And share the episode with your circles if you found it interesting. There's definitely so much to take away from this episode. We learned about so many different things, and we'll do a blog post and break it all down. And I'll talk with you next time. Thank you.